Hello, welcome to another Untangled episode with me, Stuart from the Wool Patch.
And me, Jimmy from Jimmy Does Knitting.
Great to see you again, Jimmy. Where does the weeks go to? It just feels like we were here.
I know, it's been a couple weeks too.
I know, and now we're in October, for those who are listening in schedule with us. We started in January and it's whizzed by. Brilliant. But here we go. It's our show where we don't chat. We go straight into the questions. So shut up, Stuart. And here we go. First question from John. I'm working on building up my knitting skills and have a few completed projects now. So I'm looking to get into more advanced techniques. Any opinions or advice about whether it's easier to get started in cables or colour work or skill progression in general? Thanks. Great question. Love that. What are your ideas on this one, Jimmy?
Well, I have a bunch of ideas. I think let's start with cables or color work. What do you think is easier? For me, I think color work's easier.
Oh, no, cables,
You're a cabler?
surely. I suppose in general, the big bracket of colour work kind of frightens me. But actually, if you actually think about it, once you've changed your yarn, you're just knitting, aren't you? You're not doing anything else. You're just following a chart. But I would still say cables. Go on.
I mean, I think color work, because a lot of times it's just like stockinette in the round, which
Yeah.
I can rip through personally really quick. But there is, how do you hold your yarns if you do like your two-handed thing, or if it's one-handed, and I know that people find that difficult. But for me, a color work project looks more complicated, but I can rip through it pretty quickly. So that's why I said that. But
I think you're right. Now you've broken it down like that. Yes, it is just stocking stitch. Once you've changed your colour, it's just that same motion. You've just got to work harder at following your pattern. But once you've got that motif pattern learned, I suppose it's even easier then, isn't it?
I think so, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's my personal experience. I'm sure there will be people like you that disagree and say, oh, cables are much easier. So I guess to each its own.
I suppose it depends on the pattern. So I'm doing a cable pattern where I only cable the same one cable. So just a three forward or three back. But I only do that every 10 rows. So it's all stocking stitch other than this 10th row where I do a cable and then it's just switching those 3 stitches around. I suppose if you chose a cable pattern where you had a beautiful like Celtic motif in the middle cable with 2 little cables either side, then a break, then even more cables there, then yes, that probably in my head would be way more complicated.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what you're attracted to, which actually brings me to the second point of the question,
go on.
Is the skill progression in general. I say do what you want to do. Like for me, I wanted to knit black cable sweaters. So that was my target. That's what I wanted to do. So that's like how I progressed to that. But if you're more attracted to like intarsia or brioche, or you want to try ladder back to card or something else, I would probably say get a project that would facilitate that better. So like you like the look of, get some pretty yarn that you think is nice, and then go for there. I like knitting a garment. I would say I would do personally a garment, but it could be a hat, it could be a cowl, it could be some mittens, something smaller potentially. Do you have any advice?
Spot on. I would say exactly the same. Go for the garment and don't worry about what it is. And I did that when I first started. So when I left teaching in 2016 and opened the shop and learned to knit, I saw a pattern that was kind of doing the rounds with a pattern designer, Josh Bennett, and who had just released this lovely pattern with all these chevrons, and these chevrons were all over, and they kind of the gaps got bigger between the chevrons as the piece went on, and I loved it. At that time, though, I was quite ignorant of knitting, so I didn't really know about techniques and how difficult some techniques were. So in a way, that was kind of bliss, because
I think that's great.
I like that. I want to knit it. And then you learn it. So you've got nothing to compare it against. You don't know if it's hard or not, because I hadn't chatted with anyone else. I just saw, oh, I've got all these purl stitches to do at certain points. So I was following a graph, but as soon as I learned a pattern of what it was doing, I just did it. So I knew no better. But I was so pleased I did that, because it just suddenly pushed my skills up. Now I look back on it, I'm like, oh my God, why did I start with that? But when you've got nothing to compare it to, it's brilliant. So I think you're right. Choose the garment that you fall in love with and just go for it.
And what you said was really good. Is I think a lot of people knit with fear of like some of these podcasters, I'm not naming names, but they're like, oh, it's a purl stitch, or oh, this has 3 cables in it, or you know, a full-on colorwork garment in like a fingering weight. I could absolutely never. And the answer is that's garbage, right? Like, don't be so scared. It's going to be fine. I think a lot of people hold themselves back because of what they've heard or something like that, and just jump in. And it's bonus points if the person has like a tutorial or technique videos or something to go along with it. If you feel like you need that hand holding, that's what I do for crochet projects, because I am not a crocheter. But if I can find like somebody YouTube going through the things with the crochet, then I'm a much more confident crocheter with this stuff.
Yeah, brilliantly put. Well, there you go, John. Good luck for it. You've obviously got some patterns, maybe, because maybe some of them got cables or some of them got colour work. Let us know what you go for, and go whole hog too. If you're going to go for cables, just don't worry about how many cables there are. Because you've got nothing to compare it to. Brilliant. Love that. Oh, got an itchy nose all of a sudden. Question 2. Here we go. Good old Jane. Thanks for your questions, Jane. Coming in from the foothills of the Adirondacks. Question. When I buy an indie dyed yarn in varied colours per skein, I have only bought one skein. I'm not sure how this yarn style would work up if I made it into a garment. I'm wondering if it would look a little wonky, since the skeins would not be exactly alike. With one skein, a hat, a cowl or a small scarf is fine. A blanket wouldn't matter with several skeins. A sweater? Question mark. Is it suitable? Says Jane. Any thoughts or tips? I have hesitated so far to try. Sometimes I have found that the other maker has had only singles to sell, and I wished for another. Oh, I agree with you there, Jane. Good question, though, because I think many people are in this position with wanting to support indie dyed yarn where the colorways are really unique and with speckles on and everything like that. But also there's a price point to indie dyed yarn, so that's perhaps why most people will go for a one skein. So that's a very good question though, Jimmy. So what can we do there to help Jane with maybe going for more, and whether it will work as a sweater?
I think it depends on your tolerance and how you want things to look. So in general, these indie dyers dye in a pan that's a certain size, and that fits per batch, I don't know, 4 to 6 skeins, let's say. So that's like the quantity that's going to be like the same for the lot. And then even if it's dyed the same day with the same like chemicals and the same formula, they're all going to be slightly different. And there's also different dyeing styles. So it could be something a little bit more tonal, which is more consistent color, or it could be like a speckled, or you know, those ones that have a skein with like one color on this end and another color on this end, and it like everything in between. So the skein's going to do something different depending on how it's dyed and what is happening with it. So it's going to knit up differently. And then of course you have to take into consideration, if you're doing a garment, like the sleeves, this is a different circumference than this. So how is that going to look? You know, sometimes it's pooling, sometimes it's not. And like, are you pairing it with a mohair? Because that changes things, or a different skein. So I would say personally, figure out what your tolerance is for the the skeins. If you don't know how it's knit up in the stitch, you could maybe do a little swatch, see how it looks, see if you like it. If that's something you want to go for, then go for it. If not, then don't. But I mean, it's hand dyed. They're not going to be consistent. It's going to have, let's say, a certain look, regardless of how it's dyed or what the feature of it is. So are you comfortable with that, for one? And if you are, then just go for it, because it's hand-dyed yarn. I'm sure it's beautiful. You're supporting small, and you can go for it. If you do determine that you like it, then there are a bunch of ways that you could do it. You could stripe the yarn. So there's like ways where you change, every certain amount of rows and almost fade things. And there are, I think, some like really good, I want to say like an Andrea Marbury shawl that has that in it with like specific instructions about like where to change colors each row. So maybe that's something. And then you can do helical knitting, which is another thing where essentially you knit like both simultaneously, like in the round, and the colors like don't necessarily show that they're so different. It interrupts the pattern to some extent. Or you could just like change every other row. That's also a thing. So, I mean, there's a lot in consideration with hand-dyed skein. I don't really work with them. Do you?
I don't, no. I'm a big fan of them if I was doing shawls, because shawls often need, like a Stephen West shawl, need 4 or 5 colours, and then one might be a bold, solid colour, another might be a speckled, because they're in different sort of sections, aren't they? So hand-dyed yarn, stunning from that point of view, what I would do. Or as Jane rightly says, it would be a beanie hat or a cowl or something like that to really show off the one skein wonders. I wouldn't use it. The true hand-dyed yarn, where it's lots of beautiful colours or with speckles, I just wouldn't use as a garment. I have used some hand-dyed yarn, like you talked about, the tonals, though. And there are some indie dyers that will do these tonals that's almost a solid, but not, with tiny paler colours of whatever colour it is, or little bits of white in. Now, they look stunning as a jumper. And in fact, Irene, one of my knitter natterers, was in, this is Saturday we're recording now, was in yesterday for Friday Knitter Natter. And she was wearing a beautiful 4-ply. I want to say it was either the Natural Dye Studio, which is a yarn dyer, or Skein Queen, which is another indie dyer. And it was just a tonal blue and she had a tank top in it. So again, probably only 2 hanks needed, maybe 3 at the most. So as you rightly say, yeah, you can get 6, probably up to 5 or 6 in one of those indie dyer gastro bowls that they dye. So you know that that's going to be the same batch, at least for that tray colour. But it's a little bit more affordable, only having to buy 2 or 3 hanks. And it was beautiful, all these different blues, but it looked lovely. It wasn't, like when you knit up, no pooling or anything like that. So if you were going to want go for a garment, then Jane, maybe look for the indie dyers that are more tonal. But there are some people that have knitted garments in amazing hand-dyed yarn where they've got speckles and everything, and it just works. And there's no pooling at all, no blotches of colour. But I don't know whether that's because of the indie dyer and the skill of dyeing, whether they've taken that into account, or whether that's just luck. I'm not sure about that because I've not done it enough myself.
I think the only other thing that would be like a tip is, if you're nervous about this, you could break it up, like you said with a shawl, where it's like a section here, a section there. You could do that with your knitting. Like you could stripe something, or you could add a mohair with it to tone down the color and make it a little bit more homogeneous. Or you could do like maybe even color work, depending on how the yarn is dyed. Sometimes those don't read very well in color work. Sometimes they read very well in color work. So it really depends. But like you can use different knitting techniques in order to like either accentuate that yarn or blend it with some other things.
Yeah, very good point. As for her endpoint, Jane, sometimes I find the maker has only singles to sell. I wish to have another. I know, because it's just the way it is. You can fall in love with certain colours, and it's such a skill these indie dyers have, and they all have so many different skills. Not only their choice of colours, but the saturation level of their colours that they use, where they place them, how many colours they use. Some can just get stunning effects from 2 colours with no speckles at all. So you do fall in love, I think, with certain indie dyers, wouldn't you say, Jimmy? You connect with indie dyers because of whether it's their stories, their colour schemes, or their colour styles. I think that happens a lot with people, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's such much personality in the yarn, and their personality comes through, and I think that's part of the reason why people like it.
Yeah, I've been doing YouTube with the Fiber Hustle boys from Seattle for a long while, and they are patchwork and knitters together, Aaron and Chip. And Aaron now dyes his own yarn, and the indie dyed world is huge. So how do you find your own special part in this indie dyed world? Well, Aaron went, I love 12-inch vinyls. I just love it. So he now dyes his yarn according to the colour of a cover of a 12-inch vinyl album. How cool is that?
I think it's great. I mean, it's just like you have like what they call in the business a USP, a unique selling point. Like this is your thing and this is how you're portraying it. And I think that like that's really great branding, and it allows for creativity and interpretation and just to have a connection and a story with the yarn. And I think that it's really great.
Absolutely. So Jane, just find your indie dyer and go for it. Find, if you want to do a garment in indie dyed yarn, maybe try the tonals first, or maybe go down the shawl route. In fact, Jane, did you commit to doing the MCAL this year? Because it started. We're on clue 1. Let us know, Jane. What have you done? I can't remember what you said you were going to do. Okay, let's finish off with the last question from Joe. Hi, Stuart and Jimmy. Is there a way to mend large holes in knitting, whether that's garter or stocking stitch? Holes, oh, sorry, that bracket was, I didn't punctuate that very well. Let me start again. Hi, Stuart and Jimmy. Is there a way to mend large holes in knitting? Oh, no, that was right. I completely messed that up. Holes which are bigger than a standard darning mushroom. That's it. So that it replicates the missing stitches rather than looking like a woven patch. Following on from your advice on picking up drop stitches in a previous episode, I'd be interested in help with how to repair big and small holes in knitting. Oh, thanks, Joe. Sorry I completely trashed the wording of that question. Big holes, Jimmy. What do we think?
It's possible. For sure. I've seen it on Instagram. I've never done it before, but it's very possible. And it's either going to look really good or really a little wonky, because if you have the exact same yarn, it's going to really help. If it's not, then it can look either slightly off or you're going to see it.
Yeah.
But there is a way where you can almost, I want to say, like weave in a way where like the strands are going across. So when you have the stitches, like there's V stitches and then there's that like strand between.
Yeah.
And so you have those strands between that you line up, and then you can take the stitches that you have down and like pick them up.
Yeah.
You can do that, or there's a way to actually like, I've seen people do it with like pins, and they like weave the stitch exactly, which seems
cool,
like
doesn't
a
it?
tremendous amount of work.
Yeah.
But, so it is possible. I don't know how to really effectively explain it here.
You did it perfectly. It is Joe. The only thing I found with all those wonderful people on Instagram who are showing these patching big holes up, they always have the same colour yarn. And it's like, that in realisticness is not going to happen, is it?
Probably not.
No, No, so I'm then like, well, that looks beautiful. Thank you for telling me how that you fixed your hole with exactly the same yarn that you knitted that in 20 years ago or whatever. But that isn't realistically going to happen. So I'm always a bit like, oh yeah, but I'm going to have a hole like that, but there is no way I'm going to colour match. And as Joe rightly says, it will probably end up looking like a woven patch too, because the chances of finding the right colour are slim. But they are great ways of doing it, and you're right. They one of the posh ones, they put their pins in and they make the grid and then they latch hook it up, don't they? That's all I would have offered. I think, Joe, you've just got to do like all these ones are doing. Go for, what do they call it? Visible repairing? Is that the term?
Visible mending.
But yeah, go on, Joe. Go for it. Or if not, look on Instagram. I don't ever know how I come across these because I don't search for mending or fixing. They just happen to appear on my feed, and I'm mesmerised by it because they pull the yarn across and they get it in place, and then they do it all up, and it looks stunning at the end. But it just
I
appears.
also think that those are professionals. I think a lot of those are companies that do mending specifically for these type of things. I think that's why they look so good, because these people do it for a living all the time. So you can try it out yourself for sure, but I think that these people have a little bit of a leg up on most of us.
But good on you, Joe, for having a go. Well, there we are, Jimmy. Brilliant. 25 minutes, 3 questions done in the bank. Hope you enjoyed it. Love it as always. Thank you for your time. And we'll see you on the next episode of Untangled. Cheers, everyone. See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.